Are these the same spirits as the first movie?
No.
Didn't Carol Ann say they're back?
Yep.
Why?
To get your hopes up and then...
All this and more on Gory Story Time.
Warning. Gory Story Time is a horror movie review show by a son and his dad who thought that letting his 5-year-old watch scary movies was acceptable. If you are offended by horror or talk about blood and gore by a child, or if you don't want horror movies from the 60s through today spoiled, then there is a remote stuck in your couch cushion next to potato chip crumbs. Use it. And of course, parental discretion is advised.
Why? You didn't use any.
Shut up and start the show.
Welcome to Gory Story Time. I'm your host, Jason.
I'm his co-host and his father, Craig, and this week, as you can see, we're doing Poltergeist 2, The Other Side. He had never seen it. We'd reviewed Poltergeist a while back, like probably
I think
a couple
we even
years.
did the reboot.
Did we?
Or the remake, whatever, yeah.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. If so, we didn't care for it, which means sometimes if we don't care for something, we don't do it. But this is the first of 4 movies that are going to be about other realities, other dimensions, and the other side. Stephen King's Talisman called it the territories.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the multiverse idea.
I mean, basically, like, it just runs with what string theory tries to prove, where it's like, all right, maybe there's other stuff.
Yeah. And
Marvel, DC, they do it all.
And we've noticed it's brought up a lot in a lot of things, so we're not going to, if it's just like a half-ass mention, we're not going to be like, oh.
That's obviously the same thing.
But this movie involved the other side,
Right.
Insidious had a lot of that.
Insidious, unfortunately, exists.
Well, we aren't going to be doing those, but we're going to do 4 movies about alternate planes of existence or something, basically.
Something along those lines.
And Poltergeist is a good one to go into. Here's the premise. The family from the first one is trying to recover from everything that happened in the first one, because, spoiler alert, in the first one, the house is gone.
Yeah.
And they have to deal with that they have no house to live in, so they had to move somewhere else, and they no longer have a TV, because anyone that saw the first one gets that. But an evil spirit wants to, like, it's not the same ones as the first one, but there's an evil spirit that was on the other side that saw Carol Ann and decided me and my followers want
we want her.
And he was kind of inspired by that Kool-Aid cult guy, Jim Jones.
Really?
Yeah, kind of.
I didn't know that. I've never seen what he looked like.
Well, he was someone that convinced a bunch of his followers to take their lives to go somewhere else.
To the other side.
Yeah, so now he wants her because he had seen her during the events of the first one. That's basically the premise, and the family just having to deal with a new spirit, but this time it's basically one that's after her specifically, not a bunch that's after the family. Stuff happens to the family just so that they can get to the one. Anything else really to describe before we show them the trailer? Nothing else you want to... All right, so let's roll the trailer so you can see what we're talking about. didn't give too much away, but it kind of...
It let you know who the good guys were, which is the family again, and who the bad guy was, which is...
Well, it was more like we're letting you know we got the family back. Except for the older sister, but she wasn't able to be in a movie because she had been deceased, which we'll get into a little bit later, too. Now, before we get into the behind-the-scenes information, we're going to sell ourselves like, streetwalkers, ladies of the night, as it were. And we're going to push all these real products that actually exist that you can purchase. This week, we got what was it? They backed up a pickup truck filled with Indian head pennies. And that was our payment to promote these things. Gory Story Time is brought to you by Curses, the in-depth documentary series about famous cursed movies, TV shows, and items. We give you all the available evidence available on both sides, or we give you all the evidence available, I didn't say it twice, that's weird, on both sides, and you can decide for yourself what to believe. Curses, coming soon. Pretend it's the 1980s and check your local listings for channel. Or time and channel.
And by It's All Your Fault, the self-help book that teaches you to...
To burp?
Yeah. Teaches you to accept the blame for all the crap in your life. Your father left? Your fault. Your spouse cheated? That's on you. You got bullied? That's what happens when you behave as you do. It's all your fault, because the trend of blaming your parents is over, and that's your fault too.
All right. Now, let's get into the meat and beef of the show. That's what Jason likes to call the behind-the-scenes information, the meat and beef.
Yes, or as I like to call it, the meat and beef of the show.
Yes, see.
Yes.
You want to go first, or you want me to?
Sure. I'll go first.
It's like, sure is not an answer.
Well, I was saying sure before you continued. All right, Heather O'Rourke was so afraid of Julian Beck, Reverend Kane, the first time she saw him that she burst into tears.
The only family member that's absent from this film is Dana, who, according to the script, is off to college, but they never filmed a scene explaining away her absence. Dominique Dunn, in real life, was murdered by her boyfriend, John Thomas Sweeney, who later changed his name to John Mora and disappeared completely, shortly after Poltergeist premiered. Ultimately, no mention is made of Dana in the final film. It was decided by the filmmakers to retire her character and not recast her out of respect to the actress and her family.
The film was, at one point, to have been filmed in 3D. This idea was eventually abandoned after seeing the failures of other 3D horror movies, including Friday the 13th Part 3, Jaws 3D, and Amityville 3D, which was a previous flop from MGM.
The partially grown vomit creature was performed by stuntman Noble Craig, a triple amputee who lost both legs and an arm and an eye while serving in the Vietnam War.
Wow. The film had an original running time of 131 minutes before being edited down to 91 minutes. It's believed that MGM rushed production and ordered the cuts, e.g.
For example.
Oh, okay. The final battle with Kane lasts all of 2 minutes. Zelda Rubinstein, in particular, was furious about this as she felt her best scenes were removed from the final cut.
The old lady from the first one and the second one. Yeah. Like the first film, there are no murders depicted and no violent fatalities.
Julian Beck died of stomach cancer shortly after filming finished. Several of his lines were dubbed in post-production by voice actor Corey Burton. According to Burton, the sound editors did such a good job that except for one scene, even he can't tell which lines are his and which are Beck's.
Steve comments on Taylor perhaps being an escapee from an asylum. In One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, actor Will Simpson played an asylum inmate. Samson played an asylum inmate who escapes.
Nice. H.R. Geiger provided the special effects designs Geiger created several designs, but only 2 made it into the film, albeit briefly. Some books on his art report that he was very unhappy with how his designs were translated to the film.
Several of the cadavers were real skeletons, which they did in the first movie and got a bunch of crap for, so they did it again. Upon learning of this, the crew demanded an exorcism be held on set to ease the rising tension, which happened soon after.
Several scenes that appeared in press stills and promotional posters were cut from the film. For example, one in which Kane tries to get into the house a second time and confronts Tangina, and one in which Steve and Diane see a flying toaster during a breakfast scene.
Beatrice Straight was asked to reprise the role of Dr. Lesh from the first film, but she was ill and not willing to work on anything at that time.
Jerry Goldsmith scored the film differently than on the first film. The original was fully orchestral with choral passages. This score is richer and smoother and similar to Goldsmith's work on The Omen.
A poster for the film E.T. can be seen in Carol Ann's bedroom. Drew Barrymore had auditioned for the role of Carol Ann in Poltergeist before getting the role of Gertie in E.T. Spielberg was like, I like her, but not for this, but I have this other thing.
Reverend Henry Kane was a rare major role for Julian Beck.
Yeah, he was usually like a background character or a side character.
Oh, okay.
The character of Reverend Kane was inspired by the infamous cultist Jim Jones. Told you.
Okay. Originally, Robbie was going to be attacked by bees. Oliver Robbins had a fear of bees and refused to film the scene. It was subsequently replaced with the braces scene, which was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm. Heather O'Rourke disowned this film shortly after its release, saying that it was boring and not scary.
There is no spoken English until 5 minutes into the film.
And director Brian Gibson's first and only horror film. This was his first and only sequel, and he wouldn't direct another film for 7 years. He's also the only director of the Poltergeist trilogy who was British.
Okay.
Now, we like to give you the Rotten Tomatoes scores. And for those who are new, Rotten Tomatoes is an aggregate score. What they do is they take all the professional reviewers' scores, positive and negative, and they tell you the percent that were positive. So their number is not supposed to be influenced by their opinion. It's just out of all of them, what percent said good.
Right.
And the people also get to vote. But what did the professional critics have?
Have it at a 20%.
20%. Not great. But to be fair, horror movies are rarely highly rated as far as the critics in most cases.
And sequels usually get it even worse.
True. With some exceptions that we've seen. The people, though, have it also low at 35%.
Yes.
Now, what was your, since I know you liked this, let's go with your least favorite scene.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious as, like, it's the only one that I ever heard people complain about. But in the movie, it doesn't even make sense. She answers that toy phone, and then she yells back to her mom, "They're back." And it's like, first of all, there's only one of them this time. So it's not they, it's he. And second of all, it's not the same ones.
Right.
They took the house and they bounced.
Yeah.
Like, they're not back.
And I think my least favorite thing is similar in that it's related. It was very thin. This entity happened to be where she was brought last time and happened to see her and decided he's going to fixate on trying to get her over there again because he had nothing to do with the first group of spirits that were involved. So,
right.
As that, yeah, like their back was just so that they could, play off
and be like,
because
oh,
They're
look.
Here was such a famous phrase. You know, I mean, it even said it on some of the posters.
Heck, it doesn't
Not
even
this one,
matter that it wasn't the same ones, because who's going to truly know watching the movie if the demon's the same demon?
But they specified that it wasn't.
Right. That's the problem. Like, if it had just been faceless demons again, they could have done that and not been as egregious.
Yeah, it could have been like, oh, they're still mad, but nope. What was your favorite scene?
Well, the braces scene, actually, was really freaking cool.
Talk about it. Try not to be too spoilery, but...
I mean, then I can't.
All right.
It's the thing that happens or the thing that doesn't happen.
All right. Spoiler alert, so just, like, if you don't want to hear this, skip ahead a little bit.
Sure. The kid, what's his name? Oliver? Or, no, Robbie.
Yeah.
He's in the bathroom. I don't know if he's brushing his teeth or looking at his teeth, but he's looking at his teeth, and all of a sudden the wires from his braces come out, and they just, like, wrap around him like a spider web, and then they, like, suspend him in the air, and it's really cool.
It was pretty cool. I would say my favorite part was probably, how should I put this? It was that I went into it not remembering this movie that well because I watched it as a kid, like in the 80s when it came out. I didn't remember that it was so hated. So when I started hearing all that before we watched it, that like, oh, it's lowly rated and all these things, I was like expecting it to just be a schlog. And here's the thing. It's not a 35% movie. It's a better movie than that. Oh, yeah. It's not as good as the first one. Do not go into it understand that the drop-off that happens with most sequels absolutely positively happened with this movie.
I mean, yeah, it's not nearly as good. And that's because the first one was great.
Yeah.
Then again, there are some movies where it's like, I expect that because look how good this first movie is, and how can that be better?
Right. It's hard. It's really hard to improve off of the first one, just because life.
Right.
But I think my favorite thing was going, no, it's not a bad movie. It's a good movie that doesn't hold up to the original.
But of course it doesn't.
Right.
Like, that's not fair.
I mean, yes, it is because they're calling it Poltergeist 2. It's in the same, So it is fair to compare it to the first one because that's the universe it's in.
They're not supposed to be the same.
No, but if it's not as good, it's not as good. It's just people were harsher than necessary because it wasn't that much worse.
Oh, not even close.
It was definitely worth a watch. I don't know why she finds it boring and not. What do you mean?
Like, I don't remember off the top of my head what the original was rated here.
I mean, higher than 20 and 35. Than this.
I think it was like both positive ratings.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure. Not the point though. So I just think my journey into seeing that it was better than, because I didn't really remember. I remember more the first one because I seen it the most, and the third one because it used to rerun all the time on HBO when I was a kid, and the story that went around the third one because of the passing of the girl who played Carol Ann before they were done filming. They made a big deal about that, so I paid more attention to that. I think I had only seen this once prior to watching it with you, and that was
Makes sense.
Right. So hearing how bad it was, I was like, "Oh, great." It's not.
It's fine. It's good. I mean,
it's a good movie. It is not a great movie.
Right.
So, speaking of that, on a scale of 1 to 10, what number would you give a good movie but not great?
Like a 6.5.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with probably. I was gonna say 6.
It's like,
realize 5 is like the line where I don't want it to go under, because if it's under a 5, I'll just shut it off most of the time, unless we're reviewing it for here.
I mean, honestly, like, I hear you say the last time that you watched it was in the 80s.
Yeah.
Which means it's been almost 40 years since you watched this movie. So I get it. Like, I don't need to watch this one again.
Yeah. The third one
better?
We'll see. Well, I'm not going to say ahead of time because, again, it's my memory from, even though I watched it more times, it was still like in the early 90s.
Slightly older, but yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I ever watched them as an adult.
Except for the first one.
Well, the first one I watch a lot because some movies are worth watching a lot.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what we've got to say, right?
Yeah, basically. So
I mean, watch it. If you liked the first one, and you like the characters, and you like movies with ghosts or demons or whatever you want to call them.
Just don't expect it to be as good as the first one. It ain't.
But it's a 65. It's a 60. Like
roughly.
These are passing grades. Watch it.
Barely passing, but
it's good enough for me.
If you don't have anything else, and you're wanting something with a little bit of spirit,
depending on how we feel about the third one, spirit.
I know what I said.
Okay.
Anyway, why don't we throw up the stuff on the side so we can do that?
Yes, you can watch this show on Fact TV channel 1082, Thursdays at 8:30 p.m. and Fridays at 7 p.m.
You also can check us out on Facebook, and by us, I mean Gory Story Time, which has quite a lot of likes, and also Fact TV has their page, and they stream a lot of the stuff live, and just check out what's on their page.
You can go to factate.com, watch a bunch of back episodes of this, as well as many other pieces of entertainment that they have. They have a lot.
Yeah. And you can follow us on Twitter. I'm at Craig Jakes, all one word, all lowercase, and I never tweet anything about the show.
I'm at Jiggly Fernbrain, and I'm still not logged in on my new phone.
But that is the one to follow more, because he does go in to his old phone to do it once in a while.
I do.
And there are some very funny gems in there.
Tweeted almost exactly 2 weeks ago.
Well, that's about it, right? Oh,
yeah.
Check out on YouTube, type in Gory Story Time. The two pages that'll come up is the Fact TV page and my Gory Story Time page. Like them both. Hit subscribe to both, whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Show some love to the people that produce the show and show some love to the show.
Yeah. And until next week, with another movie about other places.
Yeah.
I've been your host, Jason.
I've been his co-host and father, Craig, and
sweet dreams.